everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me all over the place at Hawk Blogger. Today, this episode is only streaming live on YouTube and also on Facebook, as a matter of fact. But good to see folks at Instagram if you're there. Not on Twitter. So sharing just in YouTube this time for primary live experience. Hopefully that's cool with everybody. Just had to get this up and out there because we had a conversation with John Schneider this afternoon, and it was pretty interesting. And I wanted to share some of what we heard in that conversation without waiting any longer. I'm going to be heading to the NFL League meeting gala or whatever it's called here in literally 40 minutes. So we're going to try to get this all done in that amount of time, or maybe a little bit less, or maybe a little bit more. We'll see. And if you haven't already, please give the show a like. Please click subscribe and share it with anybody that you think might like it. Part of how I'm able to travel around and cover the team this way is with your support. So you being able to be a patron at patreon.com/hawkblogger, you just liking and subscribing and watching the show, or you being a YouTube member, all of those things are super helpful for making it possible for me to give you as good of a amount of Seahawks coverage as possible. And so let's get right to it. There was a bunch of questions asked for John Schneider. This was just the media that traveled for this event. So a small group, very informal setting. And there's just a few things I'm going to share. I'm not able to share the full audio of the whole conversation. The people that, especially the reporters that make the trip here at their company's expense, you know, part of the benefit of doing that is that they get some exclusivity to that audio and to the sound bites and the quotes that come out of that conversation. But I do want to play a few sounds specifically around some of the questions I asked John Schneider that I think you guys will be interested in, that I certainly was interested in as part of why I asked. So thanks to everybody who's been supporting the show. We're well over 17,000 subscribers and heading towards 18, and would love to add you to the mix. So make sure you do subscribe to the show. Okay, so with that, the first thing I wanted to play for you, and let me make sure I've got this. Oops, it's not on stage yet. Let me get this properly set up. Okay, if you can't tell, this is my hotel room in lovely West Palm Beach, Florida. Haven't been to Florida in a while, but enjoying my time here. I'll be flying back tomorrow night. Tomorrow morning, we'll be talking to Mike McDonald. Looking forward to getting some information from him. And we'll obviously do an HB Mornings tomorrow as well. So figured we'd sneak in a little bonus episode. All right. So first thing I wanted to share with you all was this conversation, or this question I asked about trades. One of the things that obviously we've all been interested in, and I've talked about, was that there are other avenues to acquire players to help your team. And John Schneider certainly has used the trade avenue in the past. So we've talked about guys like Wyatt Teller, the guard in Cleveland. We've talked about other potential options. There's not necessarily a lot that jump to mind, but Wyatt Teller is the most obvious. And I asked John Schneider, I'm going to play the sound of me asking the question so you get to hear that, as well as John Schneider's answer to this question about trades.
You mentioned trades, obviously kind of progressed through your first choice free agents and then second choice, and now you kind of look at other options. Do you think that there are realistic possibilities to add to the team through trades of guys maybe on the last years of their deal, teams looking to make some moves there?
Yeah, post-draft,
Post-draft,
see what people do, and then at that point, it's kind of like reset there for about 2-3 weeks. People trying to figure out if they can keep your guy, rework him or not. They can. That's when we move in. But we're like kind of, you have to set that up. That following week after the draft is when we do that. We kind of sit down and meet, like, what does everybody look like? What just happened? And then try to attack those teams.
So what you heard there from John Schneider is a pretty emphatic yes, that's something that they will explore and that they'll look at, and that the timing of that matters a lot. So it's not just about doing it as soon as possible. right now is not necessarily the best time, and the next few weeks is not the best time to make that kind of move because teams, including the Seahawks, don't know what they're going to have on their roster. So post draft is when John Schneider said they'll sit down as an organization, they'll have a conversation about who they have, who they're interested in, and who might be available around the league. That'll be happening across the league as well. And then they'll be checking in with other folks across the league to find out a little bit more about what's going on. That's also a time when you may hear or might find that teams are trying to potentially look at extending some guys on their team or negotiating a contract of some sort. And if they find that there's not an equal willingness on the player's side, or they don't have a realistic number, or they're not in agreement, where the team realizes, like, let's take a Wyatt Teller as an example. He's on the last year of his deal with Cleveland. Maybe they draft some more offensive linemen. Maybe they decide they're not as interested in keeping him around past this year, and he's on the last year of his deal. Then they become more interested or more willing to consider a trade for a player like him. So I think trade is definitely on the table, but it may be not right away, right? It could be after the draft that you hear that. So again, this is exclusive sound you're getting. You will not get this anywhere else. I think everyone else that is here is going to be using quotes in their articles. I'm giving you actual sound. So hopefully this is good stuff for you guys and you like it and appreciate it, and like and subscribe to show that appreciation. So next thing I wanted to share was a conversation I had with him, or a question I asked with John Schneider about basically, like, man, things really went fast, and there was a lot of coordination that had to happen between, going from trades to free agency and then getting into 30 visits. And so I had two questions for John Schneider. You're going to hear me ask the question. And I think I'm giving you me asking the question in this case because I think it helps, set the context for how he's answering. But I also wanted to know, like, first of all, how do they manage all that coordination and prioritize their time? Because a lot of that was overlapping. And two, how do they think about 30 visits and how do they use 30 visits? You'll hear John Schneider talk about that here after I ask the question.
Seems like things went really fast from, negotiating with Gino and DK to trading, then start of free agency, and now second wave, and now 30 visits.
Yeah.
Right? Can you talk a little bit about, like, how you manage and prioritize within the organization when all that's happening kind of almost on top of itself? And then talk about how do you use 30 visits? Like, is it, some people think about it's for the best guys, some people think about getting to know. How do you use them?
Yeah, great question. It's a mix. It's a mix of those guys. The 30 visits are guys that we want to just spend more time with, get more medical information on, have our doctors literally place hands on them. We drafted Scott a number of years ago, and he didn't go to the combine, so we didn't have that cardiogram. So we got into that situation. We never want to have that ever happen again. So being able to sit with these guys and just do extra medical testing or extra psychological testing, or heck, just spending more time with the coaches and being watch those guys work. You guys have been around our building, so watch them work around the building with like Stu and EK and Mo, and how they maneuver around the building, how they treat people for important to us. Top guys, yes, especially the guys that you definitely you just want more information. So we spend a lot more time with Frank Clark, Frank in, those guys that are going through some off-field stuff that we want to do. But the pace and managing it, that's a great question. Our staff's awesome. Nolan, Matt Berry, Trent, Lily, the whole group's awesome. Joey Lane. Really, there's 30 visits. Trent and Matt Berry, they're on that. Aaron Hyman, those guys really focus on hey, we need more information. This guy, and we're gonna bring this player in. We'll save a couple spots too. So we're just constantly kind of negotiating with each other, who should we bring in, who should we not bring in, and who should we go see, or who should we have the coaches and or scouts go see.
So that was John Schneider talking about 30 visits, and I thought it was really interesting to hear him talk about it and the different ways and reasons that they do 30 visits. We've talked about this before. It's not just about here's their top prospects we're most interested in. some guys are medical. Some guys, they want to get a little bit more of an interpersonal evaluation. Some of it's just wanting to see how they interact with the people around the building. You also heard him talk. He mentioned Scott. I'm pretty sure that was Garrett Scott, a former late round pick that they took that was a tackle, talented player, but ended up having a heart defect that kept him from being able to play in the NFL. They didn't find that out till after the draft. And that's what he's saying. He doesn't want that to ever happen again. So it was interesting to hear him talk about that. And then you heard him talk about Nolan Teasley, who's assistant GM, and other guys that help manage and help decide which guys they want in for the 30 visit, which one they want to go visit, send a coach or a scout or someone else to go talk to. So a lot of stuff. I mean, it really is mayhem during this period of time where you're having free agent visits, where you're trading players, where you're scouting draft picks, you're having 30 visits. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I find it a fascinating part of the NFL schedule. It was cool to hear John Schneider kind of talk about some of those logistical realities. Next sound I want to play for you is a question I had asked John about just the fact that trade compensation has dropped for moving back, and has he noticed that? And let me make sure I've got the right sound set up here for you. Here it is.
You notice that the comp for moving down, trading back in the first round, has seemed to decrease the last few years.
Yeah.
Like fourth round pick to move back in the first round.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Yeah, because we like being able to, trade, just being able to have that flexibility to move around, and it seems like it's harder to move back now than it was even just like 3 or 4 years ago.
So you heard John there just talking about acknowledging that it is way harder to get reasonable compensation for moving back. And when I threw out fourth round pick is kind of what you get sometimes. He's like, yeah, and it's a bummer. He's acknowledging that kind of capital has changed. He goes on, I'm not going to play the whole sound, but he went on to talk about just how much that has changed over the years, and how even just a few years ago it was pretty different, let alone 10 years ago, where people were pretty willing to pay to move up. And I would bet analytics is a lot of why that has changed. I didn't get a chance to follow up with John about that, but a lot of front offices are getting smarter about the value of moving up and when to move up and what positions to move up for. It's pretty much an accepted reality that the only position you should trade up for, especially in the first round, is a quarterback. So unless you're looking for a quarterback and unless there's one that you really like, you're generally not trading up in the first round. And doesn't mean it never happens, but the demand is down. And I think, John Schneider's acknowledging that that's something that they've felt and has adjusted to their kind of draft philosophy and what they expect. I went on, and this is one of the ones that I was most really intrigued by the answer from John Schneider. And I'll say again, I thought this was one of the more interesting conversations we've had with John Schneider. Now, I'm a little biased because he's answering questions that I'm asking because I'm interested in the answer to these questions. Maybe you guys are not. Maybe this is every other time we hear from John Schneider, but I really enjoyed hearing these answers. And this one, I asked him, when you enter a draft with 5 picks in the top 92, do you enter expecting and wanting to just add 5 great players, or you enter kind of thinking that you want to move around the draft board? And here's what John said.
Do you enter a draft like this when you got 5 picks in the top 92, hoping to use all those 5 to add 5 great players, or do you think about you want to use some of those to move around the draft board?
Both. Yeah, you kind of yes. Initially, you're like, yeah, we're gonna take 5 really good players, but then you can get a situation where it's like, okay, well, all right, like a starter, we probably should we should probably move to go get him if you can, So, and again, it depends on how other people see these guys, but yeah, it allows us the ability to just be more free, throughout our draft process and that weekend.
I thought that was pretty interesting from John Schneider, and you heard him say, let's just be more free. My takeaway from that was that I don't think the Seahawks are expecting to pick 5 players. That's my takeaway. And just doesn't mean that that's true, but I think John Schneider has a history of trading back in the first round. I don't think he's ever traded up in the first round. I might be wrong, but I don't think he has. He has traded up in the second round, in the third round, in the fourth round. He's traded up a lot on day 2 and 3 in the draft. And so I wouldn't be shocked if John Schneider is thinking, man, if there's a quarterback we like that slips into the top of the second round, we'll go up and get him. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, another player that they think that might be the guy that they want, top of the second round or middle of the second round, that they might move up from 50 to go get them and give up one of their third round picks to do it. Who knows? So as we've done these mock drafts together, I've generally wanted to hold on to those 5 picks, but I also, knowing what I know of John Schneider and the way he's approached these things in the past, I'll be surprised if he keeps all 5 of those picks in the top 92. I think he is going to move around the draft board a little bit to get guys that they really like, especially on day 2. That's my read. Doesn't mean I'm right, but that's my current read on what John Schneider's saying there. Last 2 things I'm going to play for you guys. This next one, maybe a little geeky, but I was interested in it. I wanted to talk about the cap space. We've all talked about how much cap space the Seahawks have available to them now. And so I asked John, hey, you've got all this cap space. When you have that much cap space, do you think about, extending your guys that you have coming up as your 2022 class? Do you think about moving stuff into this year? Do you think about rolling it over? And I thought it was interesting hearing from John how he thinks about that.
Big draft in 2022, and a lot of those guys are up for extensions, or at least that conversation. You guys have a lot of cap space.
Yeah.
You talk about, philosophically, when you have a lot of cap space, how much do you think about rolling it over? How much do you think about trying to maybe extend and move some of that into this year?
That's a great question. We're constantly talking about it. The law office, Joey Schneider and Joey Lane, those guys are doing that all day. This is what we project. This is what 2026 may look like. 2027, if we do this player. So extension-wise, we attempted to do Geno at the combine. But other than that, we usually wait till post-draft into June, have things, kind of get things settled, and then identify okay, what's next year's group of offensive linemen going to look like, linebackers, corners, and whether that's in the draft or free agency, whose contracts are coming up, and then assess at that point. And the same thing goes into it. Durability, medical history, all that's coachability, all that stuff still goes into it. So you're that stuff that's post draft. When you've seen us, Julian, we probably started, late June, and then just kind of had a little pause. And same thing with Chen on the previous year. So those are kind of those guys are. Those guys were on 2-year deals, but we have the class that's coming up is really important to us.
So that's John Schneider talking about this 2022 draft class, and that the time frame, as you and I have talked about, all of you and I have talked about over time, is June is kind of when they start looking at those types of extensions. And so anyone thinking hey, why hasn't it happened yet? That's why. They don't tend to do that business right now. It's also worth knowing, there was at least one report that part of what DK Metcalf wanted was he wanted his extension now, and the Seahawks tend to do his extension in June. That's when they extended him last time. Who knows why or how much that factored in, but that's spilt milk, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on it. More time than we already have, I should say. But, they are going to look, and I thought it was interesting hearing him talk about the fact that they will evaluate those players all over again, right? Including durability, which Kenneth Walker is a question, Abe Lucas is a question, as they evaluate which of these guys they're going to bring. Coachability, maybe that comes in with Reek Woolen, all those kinds of things are going to be evaluated to decide whether or not they're going to do those extensions. So I think it's going to be a very interesting June through September part of this offseason, because we'll get a read on which of these class of 2022 the Seahawks want to bring back and and want to extend, and which ones they want to get a little bit more information about into the season. And I've told you before, the guys I kind of think are top of the list, Charles Cross, they may just take a 5th-year option on. And then I think Kobe Bryant is high on that list. Boye Mafe is probably high on that list. Everybody else, I think, is a question mark about whether or not they will extend them before the season. But we'll see. I'm looking forward to finding out. All right, last bit of sound, and I thought this was news. I asked John Schneider about the center position, and listen to what he said here.
Jalen Sandell and Olo to me a lot, and so is Mike.
Yeah.
Guys that coaches like. If all things are equal, if you have some guy you love as center comes up to you in the draft, or a guy you love at guard, would you still want to upgrade at that position if you could?
Center's gonna be difficult because the center group in this year's draft is not very strong. That's just how we see it.
Yeah.
And Olu, and you guys haven't really seen Jalen yet. He came in, they played really well. He played several positions. Staff really likes him. He's smart, tough, reliable. That's gonna be interesting. Those two guys, that's gonna be pretty interesting there. But center's gonna be hard, yeah.
There's been.
So pretty interesting to hear from John Schneider about the center position, because we haven't heard that yet, at least that clearly. One, that they don't necessarily see center as a strong part of this class. A guy like Jared Wilson, who played center, that means that they don't necessarily think that highly of him. That's interesting. I think he seems like a really good center for a zone blocking scheme, but who knows? That's their evaluation. It doesn't mean they don't like Jared Wilson, but it seems to imply that they're not necessarily that high on a guy that's clearly a center. I've been looking at Gray Zabel as not just a guard, but as a center and having the ability to play there. They may be looking at him exclusively as a guard. It does not mean that they're not interested in Gray Zabel, but the fact that a lot of people have him listed as the top center in the draft, it also may mean that they don't see him as other people might see him. Either they see him as a guard, or they don't think as highly of him as a lot of the rest of us do. So I thought that was a pretty interesting tidbit. It also points very clearly and squarely that guard is the area that they're looking to add to, and that Jalen Sandell and Olu Oluwatimi, they're not only the guys to watch for the center spot. I wouldn't assume Olu Oluwatimi has that job on lock as the starter. I think there's a lot of people in that building that really like Jalen Sandell. And remember, Jalen Sandell played all 5 positions. He was a backup tackle at times last year, meaning that they felt like he could pass protect on the edge. You put an athlete like that in the middle of your line, his potential as a mover is particularly interesting, and that was as a rookie, an undrafted free agent. What's he going to do with his offseason? What's he going to do with the coaching? And what's he going to do if they do add Gray Zabel, who was his teammate at North Dakota State? If you want to hear Gray Zabel talk about Jalen Sandell, go find my video on my channel where I asked Gray Zabel about Jalen Sandell at the Combine. You can find the Gray Zabel interview up under the player interviews watch list, or just search for Gray Zabel Hawk Blogger or Gray Zabel Combine Hawk Blogger. You will find it, and watch that. Hear him talk about the fact that those guys text all the time. He had texted Jalen Sandell that morning of the Combine. So I think that could be a really interesting combination, those two. I also think it's worth noting that the Seahawks, John Schneider especially, has made note of how having guys in the building that they can lean on to get information about a player is something that matters to them, because they want to get a guy that they really feel good about, that they really know. He talked about with Cooper Kupp, I didn't play the sound, but that Jake Peets knows Cooper Kupp, was in the building with Cooper Kupp, and that matters to them when they're evaluating these guys. So I would not sleep on Jalen Sandell. I am reevaluating center as a position that the Seahawks will draft. And who is on their draft board is also maybe changing a little bit from my perspective. A guy like Jared Wilson might not be on their board as someone that they're looking to add. So interesting stuff there. That was, I think, a lot of particularly new and interesting information from John Schneider, all questions that I asked that I hope are helpful for all of you. It's why I'm coming out here to do this, is to get this info and to learn. In about 10 minutes, I'm going to head down to the gala or whatever it is. No cameras, no audio, no interviews. It is just meant to socialize and meet people. I would bet that the NFL people in general probably will be there for a few, and then they'll all jet, and it'll just be a bunch of media leftovers, and all the cool kids will go off and do other things. But yeah, I'm hoping to get a chance to hang out with some folks and have some good conversation. I'll share stuff if it's appropriate for me to share it. And then tomorrow morning, I will be talking to Mike McDonald at his breakfast in the morning. And I got some comments, I have to admit, that bothered me on my show this morning. By the way, sorry about the connection. Hopefully the connection is better for this one. I haven't been able to watch chat because my setup's different here. But anyway, it was the internet connection was really bad, and so sorry about that. I try to give you guys good quality on that stuff, but somebody was pissy about the fact that I spent a few minutes talking about my trip here, and that I took some time. I took Ambien last night to sleep in time to wake up for the 4:45 a.m. Pacific time coach's breakfast. I think for a lot of you, like, that's part of the conversation. We are here as people and trying to get to know each other. And I think a lot of you appreciate having some visibility into the stuff outside of football. But the thing that bothered me was not the comment, but just that it was very mean spirited. So just a reminder that, like, part of being a part of this community is being nice to each other. Like, there's just not enough kindness out there in the world. I will not tolerate people being unkind to me, each other, to guests, whatever. So just a reminder, like, you can disagree, you can debate, you can think that, whatever. That's all great. I have no problems with that. But let's do it with some respect and with some kindness to each other. And almost everybody here is, like, amazing. That's part of what I love about this community. It's part of what I love about this job, is that we've got a really, really good group of folks that come here. So I just wanted to kind of just remind folks about it. Okay, we have Full Throttle Gadgets has given like a super thanks or a sticker or something. I can't quite tell, but thank you for that in a super chat. Appreciate it. And I hope this was worth it for all of you. I could have waited till tomorrow morning, but you know what? I was like, this is pretty meaty. This is pretty juicy. Like, let's get it out to the people. You guys as subscribers, especially if you click the bell to get notified when we go live, you're the first people on the planet to know this information outside of me. So hopefully that's a benefit. Hopefully you've liked and subscribed. Hopefully you join over at patreon.com/hawkblogger or become a YouTube member. Join and upgrade to club level or higher, and you get access to the Discord channel. Patreon membership also gets access to the Discord channel. Awesome place to be, awesome group of people to hang out. They will keep you up to date on everything going on in between the shows. So hopefully you are there. If you want instructions for how to get onto the Discord, there's a post on patreon.com/hawkblogger that explains it. Or I've got a post on the community tab of the YouTube channel that explains how to connect your YouTube account. So make sure you take advantage of all of those. 12 for Life says, has been a member for 6 months. Well, first of all, that's awesome. Thank you. Says, we love you, Hawk Blogger. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you. I love you guys as well. I really, really do. It's really, really cool group of folks. And, when there's a lot of meanness in the world, it's nice to know that there are literally thousands of people that come here every day to hang out and be nice to each other and talk about something as frivolous as the Seahawks and enjoy our time. So appreciate all of you. With that, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to head off down to this show. For Patreon members, I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to. I will try to rip this to audio and get it up before I leave. It might be a little bit later. All right. Until then, take care and have a great rest of your night.